You look so pretty when you're like this. Shh, it's just me. Shh. No need to be scared. It's just me. Used to be better than this at sneaking up on my prey. Hmm? Oh, it's nothing, pet. Go back to sleep. Damn. You really do feel good in my arms. Did you miss me? You're cute. I'm sorry I was away for so long. I was just busy taking care of, you know, business. No, nobody died. Ah, a shame. That was a joke, dear. Relax. I avoid getting my fur dirty to the extent that such a thing is possible. Besides, much of what constitutes running the Underworld is actually pretty mundane. Mostly maintenance and supervision. Hardly what I'd call exciting. Oh, it involves things like tracking shipments, making a lot of phone calls, investing, and sighing quite often lately. I seem to be doing that all the time at work now. Ah. Because I miss you, dummy. My tail keeps moving around on its own, as if trying to coil around your waist. But then you aren't there. It's quite frustrating. You know I can't let you leave this facility just yet. Rules are rules. I've only had you to myself for a very short time. I'm not running the risk of you running away. Do you understand me, pet? Good boy. It's not that I don't trust you. I do. There are just some things I simply cannot compromise on. You should know you're one of them. You know the rules. If you behave, if you keep being a good boy, then you'll eventually be out of these restraints. And then we can go anywhere you like. We could go to the movies, get ice cream, go to an arcade, or a karaoke, or even that little club where we met for the first time. And you can stutter every second sentence all over again. Ah, I would certainly like that. But for now, tell me, my dear, how was your day? The girls weren't too mean, yes? Really? You seem to be enjoying this a little too much. I wish I could be here during the day to spoil you instead. But I knew putting Eve here was a bad call. Always so friendly and lovey-dovey with every guy she meets. This is why she's still... Ah, you were telling me about your new friend, Eve. Has she shown you her wings yet? You know she's a moth, right? One of those moth girls. Whatever. Don't get too friendly with her. She is a great accountant, but not so great with men. Girl has no sense of boundaries. Why, this one time she... I don't appreciate being interrupted, dear one. What is it now, Pat? Oh? You explained to her how oil lamps evolved into modern-day bulbs. I see. Must have been quite the story. She found it fascinating? Yeah, I'm sure that's all she found fascinating. Dear, she's a moth. She knows all about lamps. It's probably her version of pillow talk. You're much too innocent for this world. How did you even go unclaimed for so long before I found you? Not that I'm complaining. At all. But really, Pet, you need to be more careful around these other species. Still, I suppose you've been behaving quite well. I met with Svelani earlier. She says you've been eating all of your meals, getting exercise, being cooperative, and obeying her instructions for the most part. I'm so proud of you. Good boy. Good boy. Yes, you are. You're the nicest, sweetest boy I've ever met. I'm really happy you're mine. But enough of this. I'm ruining your sleep schedule, aren't I? Sleep is very important. Of course it is. Tigers sleep for 18 hours a day. Well, no, I don't. But maybe I would, if it meant cuddling you all the time. Just like this. Go back to sleep, Pet. I'm just going to... cuddle you. Okay? Good. Not like you had a choice in the matter, but it's sweet of you to say yes. Thanks. What? What? What is it? You can't sleep? Why not? You don't know? I've heard counting sheep helps. Although I, personally, would just get irritated seeing all those animals jumping around like they're at the top of the food chain. Falling asleep is not difficult. You just stop thinking about it. And you fall asleep. Easy. Well, I don't know how it works for humans. I've never taken care of one before. Is there anything you need? Water? Perhaps more blankets? Or some cookies? Maybe a small tranquilizer dart? Don't look at me like that. It's a viable solution. Excuse me? You want me to tell you a bedtime story? You, pet, you're supposed to be a functioning adult. Oh, no. I suppose there's nothing wrong with it. If you're a cute little baby, little boy. You're adorable. Ah, fine, fine. I'll tell you a story. You don't get to blame me if it's bad or boring. Actually, it might help you fall asleep faster if it is. Nothing, dear. Just lean into me and relax. Do you feel my arms around your chest? My soft fur brushing against your skin? Do you feel my strong muscles under my smooth skin? And how my tail just can't seem to let go of your left thigh? Sleep. I've got you. Just relax. Sleep and listen to my voice. Once upon a time, many, many years ago, there was a kingdom in a land far away from here. A land of jungles and rivers and golden palaces, of myth and monsters. The kingdom was prosperous, its rulers kind, and its people happy. There was no shortage of food or water, no threat of incursion, no outbreak of disease. The rains were plentiful, and the fields full of crop year-round. Trade with the neighbouring kingdoms brought in ample riches, and the people were warm and honest. It was a place of peace, stability, and joy. And so it continued for many years. I can see your face changing. It's okay, my dear. Relax. Soften. You sensed it. What is paradise can't be eternal. This kingdom was no exception. After a passage of many decades, one summer, it turned into a place of conflict and strife. The people grew indifferent and dishonest. The crops in the fields withered under the scorching sun, and the rains dried up. An epidemic spread through the kingdom, and the once prosperous land was now filled with the diseased and dying. All of this deeply saddened the prince of that kingdom. The young man was so heartbroken by seeing his people suffer. He wanted to do anything he could to help them. And as he stood on the balcony of his palace at dusk one evening, a soft chill hanging on the quiet summer night, the answer came to him. Beyond the borders of his kingdom, there was a great jungle, dark and deep and full of secrets. In those days, when magic was still a part of the material world, there was a rumor, a legend, that at the heart of the forest, beyond the borders, there was a great treasure hidden. A gemstone that could grant wishes. All wishes. But nobody who had ventured into the forest had ever been sighted by living eyes again. For there was a demon inside that forest, powerful and terrible. The guardian of the stone, or so the legend said. With no other solution in sight, the prince vowed to enter the forest and retrieve the wish-granting stone. He slipped away under the cover of night alone. He didn't want to risk the lives of others who would wish to accompany him. Once inside, he quickly found himself lost in the woods, with no map or sense of direction. But the prince wasn't fazed. He was just like you, my pet, full of wonders. The prince put one step in front of the other and kept walking. He had a feeling that would eventually lead him to what he was looking for. Something told him. And after a short while, he found a woman in the forest. She was beautiful, with kind eyes and elegant clothes, not much different from his own. The prince was surprised, for she clearly didn't belong inside that forest. Before he could ask her if she was lost, she told him herself that she was, in fact, lost. She was trying to find an old shrine inside the forest. It was very important to her, but she refused to tell him why. The prince, being much like you, suggested he would help her to find the shrine. Something pulled him towards the beautiful, mysterious woman. But he also genuinely wanted to help, you see. For his parents had taught him good deeds shine the brightest, even when there's no one around to see. And so, they travelled together through the forest, through night and day, sun and dark, past crystal blue streams and nameless groves. Along the way, the prince found a man crippled with hunger. He shared a generous portion of his own food with the man and helped him walk for some distance before the man said he was able to walk on his own. He bowed in gratitude to the prince, but the prince simply smiled and wished him well. As he returned to his companion, the woman asked him why he'd chosen to help the man. The prince stared at her puzzled and shrugged. "Those with plenty should give some of it to those without," he said, or something like that. In any case, the two resumed their journey. Along the way, they found another man, this time standing on the very edge of a cliff, staring into a dark chasm. The look on his face told the prince all he needed to know. He rushed over and pulled the man back from the brink. The man burst into tears, and the prince just smiled in sadness and sat with him. They talked for a long time, before finally the man stood up, his eyes with just the tiniest spark of life in them, and he made his departure. The mysterious woman took his place beside the prince, still sitting on the ground, and asked him why he'd chosen to save the man. The prince looked at her, and then lowered his eyes as the tree leaves rustled around them in the wind. "I do not know what is on the other side. I know what is here." Over the span of their journey, they grew close. The prince liked her curiosity about the world. He loved seeing her smile, on the few occasions that she would smile. He loved her eyes and the way she made him feel. And, he hoped, she liked him back. Why else did she start holding his hand at some point as they walked? Along the way, they met an old man. The weight of all the years he'd lived was visible upon his shoulders. He was frail and limped slowly on a wooden stick, his visage a pale shadow of what he must have once been like. But he kept limping along. The prince asked him if he needed any help, but the old man told him no. And then he began recounting to the prince adventures from decades ago, launching unprompted into a long and great narrative of all the people and places he'd seen, all the things he'd done. The prince smiled politely as the man talked, but there was more to his smile than politeness. Finally, when the old man took his leave after several hours, the woman asked the prince why he'd chosen to listen. The prince smiled at her and then looked up at the sky. Time takes everything from us, in time, but never our stories. And the woman simply blinked at him, puzzled. And after a while, there it was, the ghost of a smile. They found the shrine in the jungle a few days later. It was ancient, beautiful and pristine, and at its heart there was the stone, glowing with its own light, the wish granter. It was real. But something was wrong. The prince's companion now stood between him and the stone. And, right before his very eyes, she began to change. She was now a tigress, powerful and terrifying, with alien and indiscernible eyes. The prince felt afraid, but he stood his ground. He'd come to realize over the course of their quest together that she was not like him. Somehow, deep down, he'd always known. He was staring at the demon in the woods. She told him the truth. The stone he was seeking was tied to her life force. It had always been hers, and she had always lived inside the jungle. He was the first human she'd seen in a very, very long time. In her own curiosity and loneliness, she had chosen to accompany him on his journey and watch everything he did. But that, too, had come to an end. So, the tigress asked, still watching him, "What will you do now?" And the prince, much to her surprise, simply smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. He told her he'd find another way to save his people, and he would not trespass on her forest any longer. "Why?" the tigress asked him. And he said, "If I take from you what is yours, then there really will be a demon in the woods." As he told his companion for so long his quiet goodbye, and began to retrace his footsteps out of the forest, he reflected on all that he'd learned and seen ever since he'd begun his journey. Inevitably, he grew sad as he thought of his decaying kingdom and his subjects still suffering. As he walked out of the forest, it was still dusk, just like when he'd left. But the prince found he'd walked out into the rain. The people of the land were happy. He saw children playing in the streets, their mothers having a spirited debate over prices with the owners of the sweet shops. The shelves of the shops lined with an array of delicious offerings, a pearl of thunder, and the excited laughter of the children. There was no suffering here, but the kingdom was his. He could see the visage of his palace in the distance, just like he remembered. And it was then that he heard a strange sound. A sound like the chuffing of a tiger. The woman was right behind him, smiling wider than he'd ever seen. She showed him the pieces of the broken stone. The rain had washed away all the light, and now it was just a lifeless rock. But I don't understand, the prince said. His companion never once stopping smiling as she told him the stone wasn't tied to her life, but rather to her loneliness. It gave her immortality, but she could never leave the forest. The stone was always meant to be used. Because of the prince, she was finally able to understand. She hugged the prince, who was still standing in the rain, dumbfounded, and whispered in his ear, "An eternity of loneliness is nothing to a lifetime of joy." It used to be one of my favorite childhood stories. My mum would read it to me before bed, and I would always be purring by the end. I like how it ends, you know? Hey, pet, did you fall asleep? Silly thing. She went on to marry the prince. The tiger goddess and the kind human. They lived a wonderful life, and their kingdom continued to thrive and prosper for many, many, many years. And it's said modern-day Jinkos were descended from their lineage. You know, what you humans so very unflatteringly call a tiger girl. Pet, there was something I wanted to give you tomorrow, but I suppose now's as good a time as any. A collar. I've wanted to put this around your neck for so long. It matches the colour of your eyes. It looks absolutely lovely on you, especially in the moonlight, streaming in through our window, filtered by the rain. Now, everyone will know that you're mine. Can I tell you something? I love you, my darling.